Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you to day 2 of the First Construction Council's flagship event, the 6th India Construction Festival Online 2020. Don't forget, if you are using your social media, then please do use the hashtag ICF2020. As you know, India is facing the worst recession since independence. So how can infrastructure spending help spur economic activity, job creation, generate income, and boost growth of ancillary sectors? At the 3rd Construction World Leadership Summit, our esteemed panelists will touch upon these points to build the industry. Infrastructure has already been included as a key part of our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi's 5I agenda for economic revival. Also, the government's plan to connect over 6 lakh villages with optical fiber network will build the country better in a post-COVID world, as it focuses on inclusion and advancing access to information and services. And the rupees 111 trillion national infrastructure pipeline built on the infrastructure vision of 2025 should additionally provide a timely stimulus to the economy. In this direction, the panel discussion for today, which is on the topic building growth in a COVID economy, will encourage those responsible for building India. As we go ahead, I would like to mention and thank our partners for their support to the 3rd Construction World Leadership Summit this year. Our gold sponsors, Larsen and Toubro. Our associate sponsor, JK Cement, J. Kumar Infra Projects, Omnicom, and Wellspun Group. Our supporting partners, Consulting Engineers Association of India, India BIM Association, Indian Steel Association, and National Highways Builders Federation. And of course, our magazine partner, the Lal Street Investment Journal. May I now invite Ms. Shriyal Sethu Madhavan, Features Editor, Construction World, to take forward the power pack discussion with our esteemed panelists. Over to the panel discussion on building growth in a COVID economy.
Good evening and welcome to the Construction World Leadership Summit panel discussion on building growth in a COVID economy. I'm Shriyal Sethu Madhavan, the feature editor of Construction World. I have all the panelists who have joined in with me for this discussion. But before we move on to getting started with our discussion, I would like to introduce you with a few more words about us and what we do. This event is being organized by First Construction Council, just giving an introduction to the Board of Governors on our council, Mr. Pradeep Singh, Architect Hafiz Contractor, Mr. D.K. Sen, Mr. Sandeep Singh, Mr. Subodh Dixit, Mr. Sumit Banerjee, Mr. Sanjay Seth. Construction World, 22 years in the running, distributed across 800 cities in India and overseas, always committed to delivering the most authentic, trusted, up-to-date and timely information about the construction business. These are the various other publications that come from the ASAP Info Global Group umbrella. And of course, if you haven't yet started subscribing to all of them, you should. In fact, at this point, we have some great discounts. And please do write into subscriber at asappinfoglobal.com. A new subdivision of the same company, the ASAP Digital Services, it offers you a complete new service right from digital strategy, social media management, website creation, lead generation. So if you want to boost your business at the best agency pricing, do write into us. You could write into Priyanka @asappinfoglobal.com. And do check out CW Gold to keep yourself updated with weekly updates, financial analysis, and a lot about what's happening in the industry on a weekly basis. You could log on to gold.constructionworld.in to get more updates on CW Gold. And most of you would already be with us on CWOW, that's Construction World on WhatsApp. We are already 10,000 subscribers and counting. To get daily updates, this is your time now. It's very simple. All you need to do is give a missed call. The number is 865 7475330. Give a missed call and save the number as CWOW, and you would continue receiving updates from us. And yes, Construction World has a website that is updated with minute-to-minute information on a daily basis. We are also available across social media platforms, and you can reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So it's the best time for us to stay connected through these platforms. From here, I go straight into introducing our panelists. Request you to please welcome all our panelists along with us, along with me. Mr. Amit Sharma, Managing Director, Tata Consulting Engineers. Mr. Nalin J. Gupta, Managing Director, Jai Kumar Infra Projects. Mr. Sandeep Singh, Managing Director, Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery Company. Mr. Sanjay Koul, Managing Director and Director of Manufacturing India, Timken. And Mr. Subodh Dixit, Executive Director, Shapoorji Pallonji Engineering and Construction. Our panelists are here, and I welcome each one of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Diving straight into our topic, the Indian economy is currently looking at its fourth recession since independence. With the country and the world reeling under the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, the Indian economy is expected to grow at minus 10.3% in 2020, as per IMF. While everything is in the state of pandemonium, the question arises that how do we get back to the path of recovery? So that is something that we are going to be looking at in this discussion today. I would go straight to begin with Mr. Amit Sharma. My first question comes to you, that in the attempt to revive the economy post-COVID-19, do you see the national infrastructure pipeline providing a timely stimulus? You know, if we look at it from turning the tide on industrial activity and also improving national competitiveness, do you see NIP providing a timely stimulus?
Good evening. Thanks, Shriyal and your team at Construction World for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be part of this interesting debate discussion. Good evening to all the panelists as well and everyone who've joined in. I think we are amidst some unprecedented times, and every country in the world is looking at various mechanisms, what suits them in the most appropriate manner to revive the economy and kickstart growth once again. What's unique is, of course, this has happened after almost 100 years that we are in a similar, pandemic, and there are some geopolitical situations as well in this while we face this pandemic. But the three ways economy can be revived. If we were a country with the currency that was global, tradable, we could print some more, like the US dollar or the British pound. Else we had rate structuring in our hand with very less debt, we could have done that. And the third most important is infrastructure, which is primarily spent by the government. And it's obvious to say that since the first two isn't a sweet spot for India, the policymakers and the government at the center, along with the private sector, is very keen to look at the third, which is infrastructure. And over the years, India's growth trajectory, wherever it went up, was led by infrastructure, and I don't think it will change now. Of course, we need to rebalance this infrastructure growth with certain key parameters of realigning our supply chains, having dependence more internally, so a balanced supply chain, which everybody in the world would look at with the geopolitical environment, but also to look at a local rather than a total global outlook that has been there in the last 2 decades. So here is a time where firms and countries will look local. And I think NIP is a fantastic initiative which combines all these ministerial activities into a single outlook with the DEA and the Ministry of Finance. And if you look at the outlay of 1.7 trillion for the next 5-6 years, though 40% of it is under execution, I think the challenges would be multifold, very much similar to something in past, but some unique ones as well. So let me pick 4-5 of them. I think first, from a funding and financial perspective of these mega projects, we will have to upfront be very clear in terms of segregation between government, central, state, private, and of course, PPP in a different shape and manner, including the funding in the lending agencies, whether it's World Bank or JICA, etc. We must have a strong governance, and must understand the interplay between these projects. And this is the first time when the smart city started about 6 years back, 7 years back, we started having proper urban planning at the city level. I think NPI brings it at a country level. And that's why I think it's very unique and bold. I think second would be the structuring and the governance around the execution, project structuring, and the whole review mechanism to make realistic timelines possible with interplay between these projects. And we shouldn't look at these projects in isolation. That results in rework and delays, and especially results in financial complication of such large funded projects, and gives ambiguity to the players involved, both from a COPEX and OPEX, because of total cost of ownership. The third, I believe we must leverage talent in India, and really under the Atmanirbhar Bharat, focus on the local talent, which has done brilliant in the last 2 decades in the IT sector. But in the construction sector, we've had a very segmented approach to projects. I think India has one of the best talents available, and with the right tool sets and talent that we have, young as well as experienced, we must look at benchmark projects. And I would want to be very open to say we must abolish L1. No country in the world will get excellence in benchmark with L1. So would NPI look at the best benchmark, Indian benchmarks, not copied from outside, but created in-house here without the L1 criteria, of course, in the optimal manner. Fourthly, to excite our talent, we must leverage digital in a big way. COVID has shown us mechanisms to do webinars the way we are doing, to do meetings with ministers and secretaries all across using technology. And I think it shows the power of digital. And if we can embrace this in our world of infrastructure, construction, and design, I think many projects will get on time, will be more transparent, will have optimized BOQs, best-in-class tools and techniques, and use of various tool sets to make sure the projects happen on speed. And my last point, speed, speed, and speed. If COVID has shown us innovative ways to continue doing our businesses despite all hindrances, we must learn from this, take this as an opportunity, and transfer this to embrace building information model, 4D, simulations of construction, all the digital technologies that we can do, because it will excite the youth who has been enamored by IT in the last 2 decades to come back to clear national growth agendas. And I think infrastructure is the right field. And I'm sure my panelists will also cover this area. So if we can do this with speed, digital, proper governance, and financials, and get the best talent in India, excited about this transformation that we are embarking on, I think it can open a lot of doors. And hence, these are the points that remain as challenges today, and hence must be looked into with careful analysis.
Yes, so, like you mentioned, the transformation is happening right now. And I think in the construction industry, speaking about adopting digitalization, like you mentioned, the BIM tools and all of that, it's been focused on already, more than before. And we are seeing the attention coming more in that area.
True.
So certainly some points for us to make note of over here. Coming next to Mr. Subodh Dixit, speaking about NPI a little further, with the private sector taking a backseat, the states being fiscally, strapped for financial resources, and the ratio planned for 39% center, 39% states, and 22% private sector. Somewhere what happens here is the center would have to do the heavy lifting. So how can an innovative funding model and greater technological integration act as critical factors to the success of NIP? Mr. Dixit, you need to unmute, please.
Good evening, everybody. And I think it has given us a great opportunity through these webinars to exchange a lot of ideas in last 5 months. And I was very fortunate in many occasions like this, where I could hear industry experts talking about multiple, avenues and scenarios where we can, as an industry and as a country, can really take multiple steps to boost our economy. And Mr. Sharma has just now given a wonderful roadmap into what could be done, having such a great pool of talent in India. Now, coming back to your question, I don't think this backseat of private player is a permanent feature. Backseat of private player is only a temporary feature. So, just to give you an example, like when you start the national infrastructure development plans, whether highways or dedicated corridors, freight corridors, or even now government is planning in terms of creating private dedicated passenger corridors as well as freight corridors also, and also private corridors for the coal handling plants. So we can imagine the land which will be available along these routes, which will give immense possibility and opportunities to private player to develop very smart areas around that. And of course, the smart city is buzzword at the moment, but all the new infrastructure which are being developed from the point of view of the township, I'm not talking about the existing township where the smart city initiatives are being taken, which are into kind of a pockets. But when you start a new development, and as our company, I can give a couple of examples where we are doing complete infrastructure of smart city, which includes housing, all other facilities, including industrial and having a smart, complete township in that sense. So once this corridor opens, so I think the fundamentally very important thing for whether private sector or FDI or any other venture capitalist putting their money into the business, infrastructure is going to play a very big role. So government impetus towards infrastructure in the next 5 years, whether it is Bharatmala or whether it is state related road things, or whether it is through road networks or highways, or whether it is railway corridors, and even also connectivity through airports and small airports at various towns of about 1 million population. There will be huge opportunities which will be available to the private players also to develop around this infrastructure. So I think what we have been missing in last 60, 70 years is we have not been able to develop new cities as an initiative. India has somehow not really developed new cities. Maybe one or two, if you really count. That also not full-fledged new cities. This will throw up huge opportunity to go outside where these 5, 6 mega cities are there and certain 2 tier big cities coming up. I think we should be, and that should be the focus, how we can really go into creating new cities. Maybe we need to develop, say, around 20, 30 more new cities somewhere along these routes, somewhere these corridors where we can spread out into the hinterland. And you can imagine when there is a new development which starts, every private player's worth his salt is going to gravitate in there. He would like to be the part of the whole new development story. So private players will always look for the opportunity which is being developed through various other initiatives which are taken by the government. Not necessarily that their development happens only standalone. They are part of the overall development and encompassing the entire infrastructure. Now, the point is whether the allocation of fund into this is adequate or not is a matter of debate, because all along, because we have a federal structure. So I think more important point is not the funds for the private sector, but the funds between the government and the state governments. Because if I'm right, no, though I'm not an economist, but if I try to say, probably recall or understand a little bit of this, earlier the tax distribution to states used to happen only through the revenue taxation. Of late, I think on entire taxation, there is a percentage which is being given to states, depending on the size of the states or the population density and so on and so forth. I think there is some average ratio is worked out, and then that taxes are given back. And I think something also through GST comes. Of course, central government also has a hit of tax collection in last 5-6 months, and so have the states. So in these difficult times, whether the distribution is adequate for state government, because we all know that state governments are in what stage and what shape today financially, whether they are local municipal corporations or whether as a state whole. And the same is the probably case with the central government. And Mr. Sharma said, if we were happy like a international currency, we can start printing dollars or start printing rupees to distribute to the states much more. But I think that's not the situation we are in. So one has to live with this. But good part is there are certain initiatives by central government which are dovetailing into the state government development also, like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, and there are certain other areas where there is a co-development funding is there. So there will be some like water supply schemes or micro irrigation schemes, or for that matter, desal plants, which are coming up in certain areas along the coast. There is and state government and central government partnership into funds allotment. So there are many areas where this fund allotment is, being shared between central government and the state government both. Similarly, there are many other opportunities like healthcare facilities. In healthcare facilities also, I think state and central government are coming together. And there is a wonderful initiative which has happened on state and central government initiative, and that is district level medical colleges and hospitals happening. West Bengal has done tremendously good in that. Jharkhand has taken up very recently. Rajasthan has started on that. UP is recently thinking about this. MP is starting that. Gujarat is starting that. So if you look at that, healthcare will get very predominant space where you will have a great opportunity. And I think central government also has decided to put about 3% of GDP into healthcare now. And I think this is one, shall I put like this? This is a good outfall of at least COVID. That there is a concentration and alignment which has happened about the health care in country as a whole, which was really abysmal in that sense. Same is the issue with the education system. So Central is very significantly now thinking in terms of education reforms. Of course, AIMS and IITs and IIMs and all those are there, which are national level institute kind of thing, which is spread over many states. But I think also there would be a lot of emphasis in creating good infrastructure of education within the states at district levels. And
right. So I think maybe the pandemic time has actually, given the opportunity to focus on these areas that were probably, not being focused on earlier. Because now, like you mentioned, we're seeing so many segments of opportunities now where the focus needs to come, and probably there's some focus coming in there as well.
Yeah, government has come up with the new educational policy, which is also pretty good. And hopefully, if it gets really implemented well, I think it is going to connect industry, education, and the curriculum in a manner that it gives overall fillip to private players, as well as the government. And I think, as I see, there are two important things which need to be seen, and that is there is no dearth of the talent available. How are we really skilling the talent? I think this is one very, very important thing which we have to take it forward. And I think there's a lot of thinking around going on this, and there's a lot of initiatives also being taken up that how do we skill people much more, whether they are supervisors or whether they are, and I'm purely talking from the point of view of construction now, whether they are supervisors or unskilled laborers, all the way up to the engineers and supervisors. And this entire value chain is being now very focused in being trained. So, and central government has taken initiative in doing this also.
Right.
Industry and academia also has started coming together. And I'm fortunate to be part of some of these committees where I find that there is a wonderful interaction happening between industries and academia. So once the skilling happens, our productivity will improve, and I think opportunities are great. So I don't think fund allocation is a matter of debate. I think these all things pieces have to come together, and then people start gravitating towards creating a wonderful infra around that.
So it started like from the point that you mentioned on, creating more new cities so that there are more opportunities. There is a lot of land that can get utilized. There can be more attractive opportunities for the private sector to, get more active in the infrastructure space. So already a lot of sectors that, Mr. Dixit mentioned, but we are also seeing in these past few months, there's been a lot happening at the roads end also. In fact, just yesterday also in our panel discussion, we mentioned how NHAI has recorded a 60% jump in contracts awarded during the period over last year. So that takes me to, Mr. Sandeep Singh, who's with us on this panel, that Mr. Singh, typically March of every fiscal is the best month during which construction equipment sales witness a surge in volumes. But this was not the case in, fiscal 2020, which led to a relatively higher inventory holding. So what is your expectations in terms of, demand revival, especially considering that now NHAI has also recorded such a jump in kilometers that they've awarded?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shreyal. I'm very happy to be amongst all of you in today's discussion. Very apt question. We all look forward to Q4 and especially the month of March when we see big spike in our sales. And this year was, nobody expected this because suddenly on 24th of March, you are being told that from tomorrow you are closed. And that is the week when, most of the equipment sales or any, for that matter, any, whether it is automobile or commercial vehicles and in construction equipment or equipment sales take place. So this year was quite bad. In fact, the drop in the month of March was about 80%. So it was highly unlikely, and all of a sudden, we were all carrying huge stock with us because in any case, we were going through bad time last year. In fact, before pre-pandemic period was also not very good for construction equipment industry. And we were all carrying huge stock, thinking that we liquidated this stock in the month of March. So it was quite a challenging time, and that continued. April, May, June, April and May were totally closed, and June just started clicking. And by the time we got into some kind of normal situation was the month of August, July, August. So March is very important. And just to give you perspective, what has happened beyond that. So till August, we just saw some green shoots in the month of August, and September has been a good month. So overall, in the first 6 months of this year, drop in construction equipment industry is close to 50%. But last 2 months have been very good. We have seen good number of inquiries. We have seen government pushing road projects, allocating funds like some of our friends mentioned. This NIP project is a very important project. Government has come out with 22 green highways, express highways. So I think the construction industry contributes largely in the growth of economy, and they are putting all blocks together. Whatever the blocks were there in terms of whatever hurdles we had in terms of allocation of projects, funding, clear land clearances, environmental clearances. I think they utilized NHAI during pandemic period. They cleared many old dues. Came out with very good initiatives. So this is all helping us, and we believe coming 6 months are going to be good, and we will see a good March in the coming year, this financial year. That's what I can say on this.
So would it be right to say that the revival time is, we are already like proceeding towards it, and probably
I can say that we are gearing up now. We were at about 70 to 80% of our production. I'm not talking about production capacity. I'm talking about as compared to last year. But from October onwards, I believe all of us will be working on 90 to 100% of our production capacity. Some of the segments have done very well, like backhoe loader, wheel loader. Excavator segment has just started picking up for the last 1 month, and it will. We believe the way we are getting inquiries and requirement from customers, we believe the coming 6 months are going to be good. And government is also, we can see a lot of initiatives because we have a lot of engagement with the government and contractors. This is all positive. Yeah, that's what I can say.
That is a lot of positive news for the construction equipment
Yes.
industry, for sure.
Yeah. Funding
Yes.
has been another major issue with us, but that is also where government is putting their act together. Yeah.
Hopefully, we see something happening in that area as well very soon.
Right.
I think Mr. Dixit mentioned a very important point of, skilling, the need for us to focus on skilling. And that also takes me to my next panelist, Mr. Nalin Gupta. The construction sector has been deeply impacted, primarily also on account of the large-scale labor migration taking place. And construction of metros, roads, urban infra, dams, and canals typically require a lot of migrant labor who are unlikely to return anytime soon. So, how do you think can we mitigate this challenge?
Well, firstly, thanks to Construction World for making me a part of this, where I can share my views. So yes, past few months has been really bad for and very challenging for the entire construction industry, and especially companies which have been more dominantly present in urban areas. So industry has faced multiple issues in terms of labor migrations, mainly from Bombay and Delhi areas, being urban cities where the effect was more prominent. The supply chain was totally disrupted. There was a slow pickup in construction activities due to the labors. So, and as well as there were liquidity issues as well. But, and the situation was so grim that nobody was aware of exactly where we are leading to. But as of now, if I speak of, I would say the situation is quite positive. The supply chains have normalized with the government interventions timely by allowing all the inter and within the state transportation. So all the supply chains have normalized. As well as if you look at the labor thing, it seems like a matter of past where we used to feel that we don't know when this labor issue would be really solved. But as of now, if we say as of today, we are almost 100% of the post-COVID situation. So labor's issues has been sorted, though we had to take, there were a lot of challenges by getting the laborers through aircrafts, through special coaches being attached with the railways, by buses, by roads, all means that could have been tried. And all the construction my other peers would acknowledge that labor issue, which was the biggest traumatic situation which we all were into, has been taken care of. And so I would say that, today I'm quite positive about the whole thing. And with the government pumping in so much of works, a lot of infrastructure works of metros, flyovers, roads, national highways, building projects, there are so many projects that are there into the pipeline. And as everybody would accept, and the other panelists have also mentioned that to take care of the Indian economy, infrastructure is one of the biggest backbone through which the whole chain can be restarted. And the government is really pumping in a lot of money into the infra projects. So that would really, I feel that this will really revive back the economy. And in this COVID, as everybody knows, it is also, I would consider it in some way also a blessing in disguise, where the efficiency of each and every person, like, reducing the staff and by, more of webinars through video conferences, the amount of people requirement or the time efficiency has improved. So rather, if you look at it in a positive aspect, I would say people have become more hygienic. People have become more time controlling, where the time management has been improved, I feel, to a great extent. Like, for instance, if this same webinar would have been conducted somewhere in Delhi or in any hotel, even in Mumbai, for the same 1 hour meeting, we would have spent at least 4 hours. So this efficiency, I take it in a positive way, though it's of course a challenging time, but I guess with all the government efforts, I think the things have been going in the right way. And especially even in this challenging times, the companies which were having more financial discipline, like we are also one of them, we could take up this matter of handling supply disruptions as well as liquidity challenges in a much better way.
Yeah, I think when you say efficiency, that also, takes us back to the points that, Mr. Sharma was sharing right at the beginning, that how technology needs to, be leveraged more now in the times to come and how we need to put that to use.
Even Shriyal, I would say with the government making, government has really focused a lot into Make in India policy. Let it be supply chain, let it be contractors, like when the projects of HSR came up. So there were foreign companies who were entitled to bid. You could only bid through them. But eventually the companies, the government opened up those projects for the Indian companies who are much, much efficient. I think the Indian, our country, we have excellent contractors with good, execution skills, management, and all the projects, like even the underground metro projects, which were usually being done by the foreign partners, is now being done in-house by the Indian companies by owning their own tunnel boring machines, own team of members to execute the projects, by even outsourcing some expats if required. And also even every product is more and more Make in India. So because of that, that would also really help in terms of the growth of the economy.
Right. I would also like to know from Mr. Dixit, since he had brought up the point of the need to skill. So, Mr. Dixit, in this time of, the pandemic where we've seen so much labor migration happening, so what is the challenge that, you are seeing, and how can we mitigate this challenge of laborers now?
One is a common thread across all the construction company, and that is labor migration or migrating labor. I think over the last many decades, what is happening is we all have been relying on laborers coming from the eastern part of India. Now, considering our ambitious program from government also and the growth which the country expect to have in coming decade, no longer we can really think in terms of having only laborers coming from east part of the country. Because I'm sure sooner or later, even the eastern part of the country also will start developing in an ambitious manner. And the locals who are from there would like to be around that area with the family instead of migrating to large city on the western coast. So it becomes absolutely important for every one of us to start training people and attracting and skilling them around the catchment area where you are working from, and not expecting somebody traveling all 2,000 kilometers and then coming and helping you out. So all of us have to probably start on this journey, that how do we really train the people around the area where our works are. Point number 2 is there are other areas in terms of vocational training programs during education time. I think new policy has brought in this wonderful initiative in this, that if you are a graduation course and for whatever reason, I think no longer now people should think that I go only for engineering or medicine or, but all those 3-4 coveted streams and disciplines. So I think government has given this opportunity now that even if you have enrolled for a program of say 4 years and you think that I don't think that's the right way of right direction for me, or maybe that's not the skills I can really develop, you can drop out after 1 year, 2 years, have a certification program, have a vocational training program. I think this will create a good line of second level guys who could be right supervisor, who could be right carpentry expert, who could be right interior expert, who could be right masonry and concreting experts. And that's the model I think entire Western world have. So they have great vocational training programs, and I think the new program of education policy should bring that in, and that will create, I think, a wonderful initiative for all of us to skill people even better. Or also we get pre-cooked material without skilling also, because they already have done that. So we need to start doing this across. Today also, as an organization, Shabuji Palinji runs about 8 skilling schools. But unfortunate part is all are in the eastern part of the country. I skill them there, or rather we skill them there and bring them to the western coast or southern India. We need to migrate from that model. Maybe we need to create a catchment in Maharashtra. We need to create a catchment in north, south, all across India, so that there's a uniformity across entire India. Because the kind of ambition we are having for $5 trillion, the projects are not going to get concentrated on the few locations as they are today. And once we start this infrastructure development spree on the roads or the railways or the all those kind of infrastructure, I think the spread and leveling of labor requirement will be across pan-India. So we need to think from that angle. We can no longer rely on the migrating laborers also. I think
at these times, the pressure of labor has not just been at the construction site, but it's been in the manufacturing segment as well, you know. And that straight takes me to actually Mr. Sanjay Koul, who's also with us on this panel. Mr. Sanjay Koul, if you know, we have to ask you that how likely is manufacturing activity to reach pre-COVID levels, given that, you know, September indicated a strong resurgence?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Singh also spoke about it. When we were sitting in early March, life looked so rosy, everything except for the bearing industry, the commercial vehicle was in bad shape, but rest, everything looked so rosy, and everybody was planning to go to Europe in July, and everything was hunky-dory. And then something hit us, which nobody had envisaged. So April, May, June, July, a washout, and then come September, all of a sudden, for the bearing industry, we are not getting enough steel from the market. So you can understand, from a swing of producing nothing in April to being almost overloaded in September, within a short span of 5-6 months was a huge swing. Looking at the forecast, looking at the order book, looking at the rest of the factors, I would say this is a V, certainly. Now, whether this V will become a W is to be seen, whether the demand will sustain or the demand would fall down. Obviously, there is a huge positive policy push. I think whatever is being pushed by the ministries is fantastic. They are trying to help in each and every sector, which was missing, if you go 5-10 years back. So I think that demand is strong currently. Obviously, there is always the fear that this demand might go away, and then you are again looking at a little bit of a bad growth. But currently, everything is saying that it is going to be a sustained demand. And also, as Amit Sharma ji spoke about the geopolitical, this is going to have a huge impact. I come from the engineering industry, manufacturing, and we are part of a global organization. I can tell you, we can see it clearly. We can see it clearly, country of origin, geopolitical issues, optimizing supply chain. A lot of manufacturing is going to happen in India. It is just going to go from better and better and better. So a lot of imports are going to get stopped. A lot of exports are going to happen, and a lot of consumption is going to happen in India. Now, in between, if, always India has this bad luck. When everything goes well, there is something happening which stops us. I hope and pray that nothing of that sort happens. We are on the right trajectory. I think policy decisions are good. Support from government is positive. Infra, which is very, very important, is happening. I can tell you that for the Indian railways, for example, running freight and passenger on the same track technically is a no-no. Any developed country you see, it will have to be, because passenger is speed and freight is load. So it has to be different, and Government of India wants to do it. Indian Railways want to do it. And you can just imagine that if we have DFCs all over the country, just ferrying freight and passenger being on separate tracks, which is running at 200 kilometers per hour, how much boost it will give to the economy. And then obviously it has to be supported by the road network. And you need to build at some point of time 50, 60 kilometers a day. That is speed, what Mr. Sharma was saying, speed, 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 last mile execution. I think, great times ahead. I keep on telling my son, now is the time to become an entrepreneur rather than work for a company.
Yeah, could we also believe that, automation could probably replace labor, which has been lost? And also, would the new labor codes introduced help manufacturing?
Automation, obviously, instead of people, machines, anything which is repetitive in nature, one day will be done by machines. Anything which is repetitive by nature. So you can't repeat, carpenter has to be there always, a painter might have to be there, an artist would be there, but anything which is repetitive in manufacturing will be taken over by automation. I'll give you a very simple example. Sandeep Singh Saab's big excavator needs a 2-meter ring, for example. This 2-meter ring, which he uses on his fancy excavator, has to be done on a universal grinder. A very simple example. And in order to set this ring on a universal grinder and to make it true, it takes roughly 1 to 2 hours, depending on the skill of the operator. And then just imagine that universal grinder is costing around $1 million and is not made in India currently. So, so whole story behind it. So this 2 hours cost goes into that ring, which eventually goes into the excavator, which eventually hits the customer, and obviously is a part of the competitor. Now use robotics and it will do it in 2 minutes. So what I am charging 2 hours to Mr. Singh on that ring, I will now start charging him only 2 minutes of the because the machine uptime has gone up, and my free time or my waste time is a productive time. And same thing goes, for example, on a tractor in an agriculture. You can geofence it, and you can know exactly when a tractor can go down, and that can be connected to a tractor builder, for example, Mahindra and Mahindra, and they will exactly know this tractor, 180 HP big tractor, is having lubrication problem, and they can immediately call or send an SMS to the farmer that your tractor actually is going to have this problem. So that is the power of a digital.
Good, very good. I think we'll get some cost benefit now. We'll start getting some cost benefit very soon on this new technology, robotics. It has to happen.
It has to happen. It has to happen.
Yeah.
Also, Mr. Singh, then I would just come to Mr. Koul mentioned make in India and, the whole focus over there. Also, if, keeping with the Atmanirbhar Bharat, can Indian construction equipment industry be a sourcing hub for the Middle East and Asian region?
Yeah, so in fact, this question is being asked many times in many forums, and we'll be surprised, when we were interacting with the government minister, the General V.K. Singh and Mr. Gadkari, they were talking about Atmanirbhar, and we said in construction equipment industry, we are very much part of the Atmanirbhar. Today, roads are constructed, and any construction work or excavation work which is happening in India, 90% of the equipments are produced in India. And they were surprised because they were thinking that they're all multinational companies who are based in India must be importing a lot of equipment. But I think in Tata Hitachi, which was earlier Telecom, it started from Jamshedpur. The first thing was localization. How we develop so that you can control your inventory, you can control cost and generate more employment, and a lot of flexibility comes in operation. So answering your question, export, yes, it is a very good opportunity for us. We have been exporting to the tune of 10 to 15% of our production to Middle East and Africa. But going forward, we need to be much more cost competitive. We lose on steel pricing. The steel prices, if you look at Asian country, it is about 10% cheaper than us, or in China. And the second thing is some important critical components like undercarriage. He talked about ring, which goes into undercarriage, and hydraulics and some of the electronics we need to localize. And for that, we need scale. So I think going forward, as the volume grows of our industry, the first thing we are going to do is more localization. Already the plans are already laid. In fact, they were all put on pause because in the last 1.5 years, there has been a big slowdown in the industry. The way demand is increasing, I think the more localization will happen. We'll become more cost competitive, and we're all looking at export to Middle East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa. The other thing which is happening now is that in a wheeled equipment, now we're going to have BS4, which will start from April next year. So we will be able to export to some other developed countries as well. So I think we have got good challenging time and opportunities in front of us. Yeah.
And hopefully we probably see the numbers on the exports changing, on the graph.
Yes, yes. We are looking at as an industry that in the next 5 years, at least we should take another 10%, take it to about 25%. So government has to work, we need to work along with the government to build brand India. That is very, very important. Whenever any conference or exhibition happens, brand India need to be scaled up. And we're all there. In fact, all our parents' company are located in different parts of the world. So I think we have a good job in our hand. If we work together and improve quality on some of these components, we can do far better. Yeah.
Well, I think there is a lot that we have to see now in the post-COVID world as the months, pass.
Yeah.
Also, from a sector offtake perspective, Mr. Gupta, if I come to you, in the post-COVID world, which infrastructure segment, in your opinion, will be the first to take off?
Well, I would say that economy today needs the infrastructure segment to lead the revival story. And the government is, they have to have a device comprehensive plan touching upon each segment. And I would say that government is also doing the same. It's like all the areas you can see in all the verticals, let it be roads or flyovers or metros or buildings, all the areas you can see even projects like the MTHL, your Bombay Pune extensions, everywhere you can see the projects been coming up. So I would say that it's a, to answer your specific question, we are seeing increased level of activity across all the infrastructure segments. And like we at J. Kumar being more prominently into structures, like flyovers, elevated metros and underground metros. So there we are seeing continuous inflow of projects happening. So I would say all, I'm sorry, it's like infrastructure. I feel that in all the sectors there is a growth. But in metro sector, I'm seeing like all across different cities, there are so many amount of projects coming up. So I think metro is something which is also the need of the time in all the congested cities where how many number of n number of flyovers you construct, it's not going to solve the problem of traffic congestion. So this mass transport system, which has been the need of the time and a much awaited project, is been recognized by all the government bodies, and we can see ample amount of projects coming up. I think much more than the capacity of the contractors that we have. So we all are expanding our capabilities.
So actually, that's a positive thing to know that more or less we are seeing an offtake across the infrastructure segment, and that will only spur opportunity for all stakeholders going forward. Mr. Sharma, if I have to ask you, what are the two key factors that could help restart capital goods production, provide employment, and revive private sector confidence? Two key factors, what would it be?
So Shriyal, I think we've had an interesting discussion covering a lot of points. Let me give a context before I answer these two factors. If you just look pre-COVID, 3-4 months before that, there were a few things we should keep in mind. There were trade barriers being discussed between the global powers and geopolitical tensions rising on the trade imbalances. Most of the countries were looking at what do we do in terms of trade imbalance. Secondly, we were looking at a lot of value chains disruption. And let me give you an example of the value chain disruption. The automotive industry was going from IC engine to EV with batteries and fuel cells. There was a big debate about where do we get lithium, with one country in the world dominating it. So should we get into a hydrogen economy? And when you talk about hydrogen, then comes the entire ecosystem of oil and gas and hydrocarbons, with buses being run through hydrogen fuel cell. Now, if you remember December, January, there were a lot of debates on this. And there was one thing missing, a trigger, a burning platform for all this to be relayed out by economies and countries. And if I were to contextualize COVID as a catalyst, unfortunate, bad for humanity, but it's acted as a catalyst to really give a burning platform, a purpose to re-architecture your supply chain, your carbon emitting and polluting industries, and truly do justice to the sustainability development goals that Paris Copa had signed up for, which India has been a signatory as well. And while we saw renewable energy taking a little bit of a movement, I think it's accelerated post-COVID, right? So what does it all mean? I think we are becoming much more responsible citizens. To become responsible, to leave a planet which is cleaner than what we got 50 or 100 years back for our next generation. And for that, we have to realign many supply chains, whether it's the automotive industry, in the EV world and hydrogen economy, whether it is circular economy and green chemicals, biochemicals, or respecting a circular economy such that things are more sustainable, even in construction world, as much as in manufacturing. And one of the things that I missed about all this was the whole story of Industry 4.0 that Mr. Koul talked about. Industry 4.0, after 100 years of industrial revolution, is now the fourth industrial revolution that has allowed us to relook at things in a digital manner, to reshape things and do it faster. And in India, which has an issue of employment, not to replace labor, but accelerate our productivity, which is many notches below the Western and the Asian industrialized nations. So if we can leverage Industry 4 and the best talent and expand our internal economy itself, our productivity levels will increase, be it in manufacturing or in construction. So two things with this context that I believe would fundamentally change the game for us. First is to really rebalance our FDI and FII. Typically we have banked upon FII, right? And, the folks across the border predominantly focus on FDI because they didn't have a strong, stock exchange. But we actually had a strong stock exchange, so we had FII. Now with our pro-manufacturing and localization focus, and there are so many opportunities, healthcare, pharma, specialty chemicals, metal mining, urban infra and transportation hubs, rather than having cities of conveniences of history, we need to create cities of economic growth. And movement of anything, whether it's digital highway or physical highway, adds value. And everything that adds value produces economic growth. So we need transportation, both in a digital and the physical world. Now, if we can tackle the financials with clarity I think GST is a big, bold move. Tax reforms were needed in this country for the last 50 to 60 years. We've taken that step, great. How do we redistribute this wealth in a transparent manner with speed and keep attracting more resources from outside, not in debt, but in equity? Debt is easy to give, okay, and it has its own challenges. But if we balance the FDI, FII, we will naturally attract investments, both for the manufacturing and the related construction sector. So the most important one will be local, think global, act local, rebalance FDI, FII, and implement Atmanirbhar Bharat in the true sense by trusting the talent of this country. And if SOPs have to be given, give SOPs for training talent. Rather than giving SOPs in taxes, give SOPs for training talent, first-year engineers, first-year diplomas, MSMEs. Let's have more MSMEs. We just inaugurated 2 MSMEs in India during this pandemic, working with the ministry. And we should have, maybe 50 such MSMEs all across training schools. So that's the first one. Coming to talent, world of post-COVID necessarily will demand an absolute marriage of digital mindset with the physical mindset. And Industry 4.0, whether we call it in manufacturing or the BIM and 4D and 3D we call in construction, both of them is about digital. Our leadership, our boards, our chief executives, chief operating officers, everyone, all the people must get literate in leveraging technology and change the mindset of our company to see how do we demystify businesses. So the repetitive work gets codified and the new innovations come because the repetitive work is already being done. You will think differently and you will innovate better. So the second most important part is trust the talent, invest in them, and embrace digital to really create innovative outputs, be in manufacturing, be in construction materials, be in our ferrous, non-ferrous investments in our mining sector or metal sector. And I think it's high time. Offsets haven't really worked whenever we have bought exports. Make offsets mandatory. You cannot work on large projects without a lead firm being an Indian company. Allow partnerships, allow consortium. The Chinese design institutes in the late 90s mandated it, right? And I think we must follow that model. Let the lead firms be Indian with the talent from India, partnership with the best firms in the world to get expertise wherever lacking. Let's partner, let's collaborate. And I think if we focus on these two aspects, we could have a much vibrant, confident, and India that moves ahead rapidly and strongly post-COVID and shows many other countries the way forward. Thank you.
Well, I think those were some great points for us to even summarize the session. I think infrastructure as a subject, the whole segment is large, and as a subject, I think we could be discussing this forever and ever. But I have come to the end of my time because we need to move on to our next segment of the India Construction Festival, which is the awards. Just before we go, I'll take one last question with Mr. Koul. That, since even the points that Mr. Sharma mentioned on the manufacturing bit as well, are the disruptions from COVID-19 offering India the opportunity to reinvent itself as a manufacturing powerhouse? I'll just take your view on this very quickly because we need to move on.
I think the short answer is absolutely. If we don't change now, we'll be changed by somebody for something worse. We have to change. It has the opportunities. One thing which has clearly come out of COVID is the opportunities. This crisis can be turned into a big opportunity. I think that with the push from the government that we should be very vocal about local has to be carried forward. And here is a chance. Here is a platform. We got to just execute it.
So thank you so much, all our panelists, for joining me today on this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Amit Sharma, Mr. Nalin Gupta, Mr. Sandeep Singh, Mr. Sanjay Koul, and Mr. Subodh Dixit. We've had a great discussion, and thank you so much. A lot of key takeaways. And with that, we now move on to our next segment of the India Construction Festival. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Minister of Steel, Government of India, will address us now. But before calling upon Mr. Pradhan, a few more words about him. Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan is the Cabinet Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas and Steel in the Government of India. On 31st May 2019, he began his second consecutive tenure at the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, becoming the first such incumbent in the history of independent India. Mr. Pradhan was promoted as the Cabinet Minister on September 3rd, 2017. As a Member of Parliament, he currently represents Madhya Pradesh in the Rajya Sabha and was earlier a member of the 14th Lok Sabha. As the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas of India, Mr. Pradhan is attributed with several progressive reforms and initiatives implemented in the last 5 years, including consumer initiatives like PEHEL, which is the world's largest direct benefit transfer scheme, and the Give It Up campaign that aimed at encouraging affluent citizens to surrender their LPG subsidy for the needy. Mr. Pradhan has also led to some key decisions in the hydrocarbon sector, which indicates his commitment to the industry. In his previous tenure as the Minister for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, he also launched many key initiatives focusing on reskilling and upskilling the manpower of India and focusing on bridging the skill gap for the Indian youth. Please welcome Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan to address all of us.
Namaskar. I am glad to be speaking to you on the occasion of India Construction Festival being organized by Fast Construction Council. I am aware that the appreciable work is being done by Fast Construction Council as an infrastructure sector think tank in promoting the growth of construction sector and creating platform to bring all stakeholders together. Friends, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has given a clarion call for making of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. An Atmanirbhar Bharat is a strong Bharat with a robust manufacturing sector, self-reliant, yet globally integrated economy. Building next generation infrastructure is a crucial element to achieve the goal of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. National Steel Policy 2017 was issued by the government with the objective to make our country self-reliant in all types of steel as well as making Indian steel industry globally competitive. Ministry of Steel is continuously making efforts to enhance steel production capacity domestically and at the same time increase domestic demand of use of steel. Steel industry plays an important role in the timely and environmentally sustainable growth of the building and construction and infrastructure development sectors, which are crucial for India to become a $5 trillion economy. The recently announced 103 lakhs crore investment plan by government for infrastructure development over the next 5 years and various flagship schemes such as Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, development of smart cities, Swachh Bharat Mission, Bharat Mala Mission, dedicated freight corridor, high-speed corridors, etc. will definitely increase the consumption of steel in the construction and infrastructure development sector. Despite being the world's second largest producer of steel, India's annual per capita steel consumption is 1/3 of the global average. Hence, there is an excellent opportunity for India to increase its steel consumption and avail advantages of greater steel uses, such as reduced life cycle cost, increased durability, and greater environment sustainability. Ministry of Steel has launched a collaborative branding campaign, Ispati Irada, with the object of promoting appropriate steel uses in the country. The same to leverage steel as an easy to use, environment friendly, cost effective, affordable and strength giving material. Our key government mission, including those in the social sector such as Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, will also have a positive bearing on driving the steel industry and bringing greater strength to the society. We are also focusing on giving impetus to exports and reducing imports. The DMISP policy of ministry has resulted in steel import substitution to the tune of 20,000 crore. We have come up with the steel import management system to maintain database of steel imports, which will be helpful in future planning. Indian steel sector is seeking to fulfill all the domestic requirements and also emerge as a major players at the global stage. I appeal to all of you involved in the construction industry to raise awareness on the need of greater steel uses. I am sure the deliberation taking place in this festival will be useful in enhancing awareness and driving the steel intensity. I again compliment Fast Construction Council for organizing this festival and bringing together all stakeholders and construction sector for fruitful deliberation. In COVID times and with upcoming festivals, I also appeal to all of you to contribute to the Jan Abhiyan initiated by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi on ensuring COVID appropriate behavior. Do ensure social distancing, avoid large gatherings, ensure hand hygiene and make others around you also aware. Remember, जब तक दवाई नहीं तब तक ढिलाई नहीं. जय हिंद.
Thank you, Mr. Pradhan, for your encouraging words. And now is the time for us to move on to the much awaited and celebrated Construction World Global Awards. So stay tuned with us because now is the time to recognize and award a lot of winners in the construction segment. With that, over to Frisia.
As we come to the end of this summit, on behalf of the First Construction Council, I would like to once again thank our partners for their support. Our gold sponsors, Larsen and Toubro, our associate sponsor, JK Cement, J. Kumar Infra Projects, Omnicom and Wellspun Group. Our supporting partners, Consulting Engineers Association of India, India BIM Association, Indian Steel Association, and National Highways Builders Federation. Our magazine partner, Dalal Street Investment Journal. I would also like to thank our panelists and our august audience for their support and presence at the 3rd Construction World Leadership Summit. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to the Oscars of the construction industry, the 18th Construction World Annual Awards.